Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, or whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. I'm back with a familiar friend, Cuthbert of SSN Army. And, we're not going to talk about what happened this past Saturday. There's probably enough people talking about what happened this past Saturday. And, I don't want to talk about it. Hopefully, we right the ship for Delaware State. Because if
I don't want
not,
any part of that. There's no. It's all full steam ahead.
it's funny. It's funny because like Jackson, my co-host, huge Florida fan, and they lost to Utah on Thursday. He's like, "Oh man, I felt physically ill watching that game." And I'm like, "Man, what an exaggerator!" And then come this Saturday, watching Army melt down in the fourth quarter like that. I won't say I was physically ill, but it was a very bad experience.
Yeah. I'll just to kind of put a pin on it. It was very difficult to watch in real
Yes.
time. This sort of my thought process had been like, okay, we're going to win. It's not going to be very pretty, but okay, it's a building block. Then we melt down. Then I wake up in the morning. I did a pretty extensive Twitter thread about my thoughts on the game, and I had written that without like listening to anybody or reading anything. I just wanted to kind of be alone with my thoughts and my game notes. Then since then, listening to more podcasts, reading articles, other write-ups, I've been like, maybe I was a little too positive when I woke up the next morning, but it is what it is. I don't know. I'm a very firm believer in let's not forget where we came from, which was the absolute dregs of college football, and not just in the early 2000s, but also, following the 2010 Armed Forces Bowl. We went through another dip there just right before Munkin got there and right after he did. So, it's real easy to get high expectations real quick, but let's just be thankful that we got a team that's worth watching and worth talking about, and we'll get there when we get there.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't said it better. I will say from a college football fan perspective, there isn't another coach that I want my team to lose to than Terry Bowden. I almost said Tommy, then Terry Bowden, because he just turns around like programs with really little success in Division One. First he did it at Akron, and I firmly believe that ULM will be a bowl team in the next couple of years. That's if they're patient with Coach Bowden. But that being said, I mean, congrats to ULM. I have no ill will against that program. They've struggled for a while.
Well, and now we have to cheer for them the rest of the year, because if they can finish like whatever 8-4, we can be like, see, guys, they weren't that bad. So that one like maybe wasn't such a bad loss.
Exactly. And I mean, what better team to root for to go 8-4, like 7-5, or make a bowl than ULM, who has the lowest budget, I think, in FBS. True underdog story. So I
Good
mean,
on them.
yeah, so I guess that puts a bow on that. But the topic, strangely enough, we're going to be talking a little bit about Air Force this weekend, as Air Force is kind of a high profile showcase game this weekend against Sam Houston State, where it'll be kind of like a 1984 or sorry, 1985 Blue Bonnet Bowl legacy game where Air Force will make its way down to Houston at NRG Stadium, the house that Andre Johnson built to play Sam Houston State. And to be honest, as an Army fan living down here in Texas, granted the other side of Texas from Houston, I'm kind of jealous that Air Force gets to do this. So, Cuthbert, I want to know your thoughts on this, and we were to get into a potential future game with Army and Sam Houston.
So this Air Force Sam Houston game just seems so out of left field to be in an NFL stadium, in my opinion. And I don't say that to be critical of either program, but you know, Air Force has a stadium of 46,000. I know it's under construction now, but for the last however many years, 46K. Not a team known for lots and lots of sellouts. Sam Houston, on the other hand, Bowers Stadium, you're looking at 14,000, and same the same mo. Not a lot of sellouts. So you've got two teams that aren't rivals. They're approximately from the same area of the country, but it's not like they're both from the same state. It's not as though this is a neutral site game that's a midway point, or this is a historic rivalry. They're in an NFL stadium that seats 72,000 people. I haven't done enough research to know if like, oh, the top bowl is going to be closed or something like that to increase the atmosphere. I have a pretty good idea of why they're playing this game in Houston at NRG, but I gotta say, there's part of me that's like, okay, we got Mountain West, right? Air Force, national brand as a service academy. Sam Houston, maybe they're a Texas brand. I don't really know a lot about sort of Texas fandom in general. They're in Conference USA. Like, I'm gonna sound terrible right now, but it's like this ain't the AAC. This ain't even the Sun Belt. Like Conference USA. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we playing in an NFL game? I don't know, or an NFL stadium.
Yeah, so I guess to provide some context to this, Sam Houston State and Stephen F. Austin, when they were both members in FCS, the Battle of the Piney Woods. So for the next 2 years, Sam Houston State has, I guess, game schedule NRG, and they're doing different approaches. I guess like this year, they're trying the national brand approach, bringing a national brand to NRG Stadium. Next year, they're doing a local rival, an old rival in Texas State, who used to share the conference with. But I mean, I kind of feel like this is akin to trying to think of a similar situation where like a neutral site rivalry was like ripped away due to conference realignment. But it's like I guess if the backyard brawl was played in at a neutral site and either West Virginia or Pitt try to, or I guess Pitt try to replace West Virginia with Marshall for that neutral site. And I mean that's kind of what it's like. I guess I think Sam Houston State fans, from what I've heard, um from friends of the program, guys I've had on the podcast before, Ben of Sports of SHSU, is that the travel experience was great for Sam Houston State fans, and they want to keep that going. But yeah, like I kind of agree as well. I mean, if you can't get a Power Five to come to NRG Stadium, which I think in the coming years they will, it's like the service academies are like the next best thing, and of course Navy has one non-conference slot per year. That is, I mean, that changes with their three, I mean, with the Service Academy games and the Notre Dame game, so they're off the table. Army, which we'll get to later. I mean, the fact that I just think we could have made this work, to be honest with you. Because there's two FCS schools in the schedule, and it's not really, it's never great when you have to schedule two FCS schools. But yeah, I mean, Air Force, on the other hand, I mean, I feel like with a game like this, it kind of makes up in some way for the recruiting edge that Army and Navy have by playing in the Army Navy game, and for Navy playing at Notre Dame, playing, I guess, against Notre Dame at NFL stadiums every other year. So that's my initial thought. I mean, I would love to see what the attendance is going to be, to be honest with you. Because I think I think Air Force fans didn't really travel too well to the last two Commanders Classics, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Commanders Classics. I this is just my opinion. I feel like they've, especially last year, 2 years ago, less so, but especially last year, I do think that they under delivered a little bit in terms of attendance. Um, you know, you had mentioned about the Battle of the Piney Woods against Stephen F. Austin, and obviously, that's got to go away. And Sam Houston is still on the hook for some NRG games. I didn't realize they still had two more. They are absolutely making the best of a bad situation in trying to bring in a school like Air Force, because if they could get a game with Texas A&M or Texas or a Power Five school, or even an SMU, in Texas, I think that'd be ideal. But it's hard enough to get an out of conference game, let alone short notice. You're a Conference USA school. It's not going to be Florida State against LSU, that has major implications for the season. So I do think they're probably making the best of a bad situation. The last few Battle of the Piney Woods at NRG, because it's been played there since 2010, you're looking in the mid 20s in terms of attendance. So I can't compare that to FCS rivalry games at large, if that's a lot or a little, I don't know. Obviously it's only a hair over a third the capacity of the stadium. So you get that big game feel, you get that bowl game feel, which I'm sure the teams love and I'm sure the fans love, but it is still a big stadium with mostly empty seats. So, I think my prediction on where they're going to stand with their attendance, I mean, I think they're going to break 20K. I think the last Battle of the Piney Woods was like 26,000. I don't know if they're breaking that. I am going to I'd put the over under at like 25,000, and I think I'd take the under.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair estimate. I think 20,000 is a fair estimate for sure, especially when you add in the fact. I mean, it's not exactly well. I don't know if I want to say this. If I will contradict myself later on with the argument I make, but I feel like I don't know if Air Force fans are tired of going to Texas. I mean, with the Commanders Classics and plus the last two bowls they played in, the First Responder Bowl and the Air Armed Forces Bowl, all in the DFW. Granted, it's Houston, but it's still Texas. But I feel like the general rule of thumb for scheduling these games, if you're in an area with army bases, is have army base or sorry, not army, military bases. Have military bases will travel. So I feel like I guess alums will travel. I just don't know what bases are near East Texas. I mean,
So as luck would have it, I happened to look up what bases are close to old NRG Stadium. And so this was actually going to be part of the hypothetical Army versus Sam Houston discussion. But within a 3 to 4 hour drive, you're looking at Fort Hood, Fort Sam Houston, the Corpus Christi Army Depot. I mean, I've never served, so I don't really know what an Army Depot is. I mean, I have an
I
idea,
don't either.
but like, right. It's like, I don't know if that's like a base or if that's like a skeleton crew and a bunch of empty vehicles. There are several naval air stations along the Gulf Coast, as well as Ellington Field. And so, if you're Air Force, you very well may have people at naval air stations. I mean, it's a naval air station, but, military bases in the modern world, kind of everybody's everywhere as needed. So, I do think there is probably some homegrown interest, but something that I always think about, especially with Army and them traveling and Army bases, is you what percentage of active duty Air Force are graduates of the academy. I do not know hard numbers. I believe the Air Force is the smallest branch, save for the Space Force. So maybe there's a much higher percentage of airmen who attended the academy relative to the Army or the Navy. So maybe at those air stations, there will be a dearth of officers who attended the academy who are dying to go to a game. But like you said, if they went to the Armed Forces Bowl, if they went to the First Responders Bowl, if they went to the Commanders Classic, they might also be like, I'm not driving, 4 hours to go see Sam Houston. I got other things to do. So I think it's a little bit of a guessing game. Texas is always obviously a hotbed for the military in all senses. So who knows? Maybe they catch a spark in a bottle and they, there's 40 or 50,000 people there. I just don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so either. And again, like you said, it's funny you mentioned, I guess, the percentage of graduates from service academies that are in the military, because I had an experience like before week one when we actually had like a couple day field exercise, and one of the warrant officers, he was, I mean, he's a BYU fan. I assume that he was a member of the Church of or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we was talking about BYU, and I was like, "Oh man, like Army's playing this weekend." He's like, "Who cares about those guys? All they do is boss us around." I'm like, "Okay." I don't think you knew I don't think you knew I was a grad, but I was like, message received. So I think that's a good point too. Where it's like Army football. We think like there's people like I guess me as a kid that thought the Army football team was the football team of the Army when really just represents like a small amount
Right.
of. So
Yeah. So I don't know. Again, listen, props to Sam Houston for pulling together everything they could as quickly as possible to try and get a team with some degree of cachet, to get them at NRG. Because if it's going to be them against whatever Western Kentucky, not to dump on them, but it's like, okay, Western Kentucky, in Houston, like this is meaningless. So we'll see.
yeah, so I mean, on to like the hypothetical our Army I guess Army scenario, which is pretty much like what most of the viewers and listeners of this podcast are here for. I think I mean I'm not I have a lot of confidence and trust and respect for Mike Buddy, of course, West Point's athletic director. But for me, it's just like a head scratcher, I guess, like not just for like scheduling Sam Houston State, but scheduling, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, all these like the teams that are moving up to FBS because like they need FBS non-conference games like in a hurry too. The fact, especially that we haven't jumped on this opportunity to play a road game in an NFL stadium, it's just kind of head scratching. And I mean, I want to think that Army would draw, and this is where I'm kind of contradicting myself. I mean, I want to think Army would draw well in at NRG Stadium in Houston because it's an NFL stadium. Granted, it's a new one as well. And if you look at Army's bowl venues, the past few years, I mean, it's been, the Armed Forces Bowl, 2017, 2018, and 2021. And then, yeah, the pandemic Liberty Bowl, which, was by chance, but of course was during the pandemic. So, not many Army fans were able to experience that. So, I mean, this would truly be a destination game playing at Texas Stadium, and if Army wants to recruit in Texas, you have kids that probably grew up in East Texas, watching the Texans play, they get to play in that stadium, guys that may have, I guess, their Army be their only, I guess the academies be their only D1 offer. Like that would just strike right to the heart of recruits like that.
I think that we always joke that Army will never miss opportunity to play a game in Texas because of the ability to recruit and the number of recruits who come out of Texas. And I think that's true. There's been a lot of talk this week in particular about Army potentially joining the AAC. And one of the things that has come up on a couple of different podcasts and in a couple of articles, and this is credit, it's not to me, it's to somebody who thinks much more about this and is much smarter about all this than I am, is that if Army were to jump into a conference, all of a sudden we would have lots and lots of games that have already been secured and contracted that we would need to get out of. So there very well may be an announcement that Army is going to be joining the AAC in 2026 or 2027, but probably not in 2024. So if that was to happen, and we would still be needing to fill out 2024, 2025, maybe even 2026 to get those games. I mean, I know I spent like you said, I'm contradicting myself. I spent the first half of this podcast kind of crapping all over the idea of Air Force and Sam Houston, but I'd be fine for Army to go down there, get an opportunity to play in an NFL stadium. I think you could probably do some really cheap marketing. I don't mean cheap financially. I just mean cheap in terms of its quality. Talk about Sam Houston and the Republic of Texas, and this is the United States Military Academy, and sort of like, it would be very contrived. Like, let's get real. It would be very contrived, but I wouldn't put it past the good people, at the university's social media accounts and or CBS Sports or whoever else might have the rights. I don't know how it works with Conference USA home games. To do something. I don't know. I mean, there's no historic rivalry there. Obviously, I don't believe these two teams have ever played each other. So, you could do something with the military, but I don't know. Other than that, it'd be like the Air Force game. It would be, this is a national school. This is a service academy, NFL stadium. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree, and I mean, I think it's funny too. Bringing up the Republic of Texas, someone with a history degree. I love the idea of bringing the history in. I guess, but I'm thinking like it's like when you think about cheap marketing, I'm sure they can cobble together some like video editing with I guess Pete Dawkins's like late touchdown catch against Rice in '58 is like Army in Houston or something. That's what I'm
Right.
thinking of. Oh, I'm sorry.
Um, well, and then it's like, well, Sam Houston is going to need one-time game alternates that like honor the Republic of Texas, and they're like the Republic of Texas flag colors or something. And I don't know. I'm not a history guy personally, but maybe it's got a picture of I don't know, wherever it was Santa Anna lost. I don't know. I did some Wikipediaing this afternoon. This is the most I've known ever about the Republic of Texas or the Mexican American War in my life is this exact moment.
I mean, yeah, I definitely got to do my like research more again on the Mexican American War. Well, not Mexican, but I guess the Republic of Texas. Mexican American War, I mean, kind of know a little bit about. I guess it's a fun fact. I remember reading in college, I guess like I mean that it was like a training ground for like all those Civil War generals. I think like at that time, like Robert Lee was a colonel, and the other Civil War generals were like colonels at that time. But that's another discussion for a podcast that doesn't belong to me, and but I mean, yeah, like I mean, I can see them doing all the marketing and stuff, but I just can't help but see like a missed opportunity for Army too, where it's like, it's like what's the end game? I feel like if we're building a schedule, the end game is a national schedule, right? So we have that down. We play in many locations. Granted, it's not national because I mean it doesn't really stretch out to the West Coast in many years, but that's again, that's not to be petty. That's just a simple truth in terms of national schedule as well. Another aspect of that is like playing in like very like iconic venues. I guess not iconic, but like attractive venues. No offense to Louisiana Monroe. JPS Stadium doesn't really move the needle to like many college football fans. No offense to them. NRG Stadium, it's an NFL stadium that's it's that. So I just think it's a missed opportunity. But that being said, if we join a conference, I mean we'll have plenty of, I guess, interesting games. Like hopefully we join the conference before USF leaves Raymond James Stadium, because that is a trip that is worthwhile.
Well, I did say on Twitter when the talk started about the AAC targeting Army as the next football only school to come in, which I think they're probably trying really really hard to do, and I think is probably going to happen. I did a pros and cons list on Twitter, and I one of the pros I put was, well, they'll come to Tampa more. So, it would be. I got my graduate degree from the University of South Florida. I'm not like a huge Bulls fan, but I do root for them. I do kind of think of them as my second team. So I wouldn't want to go there and see them beat my beloved Bulls, but it would be fantastic. I'd love to go see them. There's talk this year of them coming to the Gasparilla Bowl, which is at Ray J in Tampa. I'm like, oh please, please, Army, enough of these Texas Bowls. Come to the Sunshine State so that I can see you in person, because I'm definitely not making it to Mikey anytime soon.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I guess on the Mikey point, I mean, I was talking to my mom. I was like, with these reunions, like, I guess there's some years, like, if my reunion happens like one year and like in the game, and I don't like the game, like, I'd rather go to another game where Army's playing someone worth the darn instead of like actually going to my reunion, because I care more about the game than the reunion. But but yeah, like I mean, with the American, I mean, the sad thing is, I guess like there's only, I mean, I love NFL venues, but there's only two teams that play in the NFL venues, I guess, USF and Temple. Temple, of course, is kind of like, eh, because the Army Navy game, so it's like,
Yeah,
I mean,
we already
but
got something going on in Philly.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I want to go back to your point, I guess, about like the scheduling, which I'm kind of like on the other side, where I think that Army would make this happen as soon as possible, because when it came to like other independents like joining conferences like BYU, New Mexico State, it was kind of like I mean, what they told the teams that they had prior commitments to, it was kind of like an expression that I've learned at work: FITFO, figure it the F out, to like the teams that were like, that were
Right.
on their schedule. So I mean, it's it sucks. It's a sucky situation, but it's like, I mean, well,
Well,
up to
the
you.
guys on As for Football, they did a pretty good deep dive on this, and they were saying that it wouldn't be impossible for the AAC to say we really really want you in our conference, and for Army to say cool, we're going to need a little assistance on buying out some of these contracts. You want us sooner? We've got lots and lots of contracts that we need to buy out, or we need some sort of step approach where the first year we play fewer conference games in order to accommodate prior contracts. I personally don't want to see Army go into the AAC. I don't want to see them go into any conference. I want them to stay independent. My great fear is that if they were to stay independent, they wouldn't be able to schedule any games, or at least not schedule any games that I want to see them play. Because how do you schedule a game with a power four, maybe one day a power three team that's got a, it's in a conference with 20 other teams. They have no out of conference schedules. So those games literally just go away. So at that point, we need to be in a conference sort of to protect ourselves. And then sort of a really outside chance pipe dream would be that Army joins the AAC, the AAC. And then, I don't know, 8 years from now, the big boys in the ACC get snatched up, and Clemson and Florida State and whoever else, Virginia Tech or whoever, they get poached by other conferences, at which point the ACC says, well, we're going to be an academic conference. We've got Cal, we've got Stanford, we've got Duke and Wake and Georgia Tech. And maybe they come calling and they go, hey, Army, hey, Navy, you all are academic institutions. We want to be an academic conference. And then we're in the ACC, which would be sort of like just an incredible turn of events to go from an independent to, being in the Atlantic Coast Conference in whatever, 10 years. But I don't know. Crazier things have happened. I don't think anybody saw this happening 6 months ago. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you're right on that because I mean, I guess I never envisioned any conference having more than 16 teams, but here we are where, we're I guess I'm gonna be optimistic and say we're not in the Super League era of college football, but that is in the realm of possibility, unfortunately. But that being said, I mean, we'll just have to see in the future. But I mean, I guess one last note on the independence. Like independence is cool for me, but I just feel like a lot of the schedules we play or like the future schedules are just like kind of uninspiring to me, really. Like there's very few games where I look at as an old grad, I'm like, man, like I would love to see Army. Like, I mean, the only games really that like really excited me were like the ACC games. Otherwise, it's just like, kind of like a, group of five hodgepodge where it's like not really teams that we have tradition with, traditional series with, except for maybe a Rice, but I saw Army play Rice as a cadet, so it's like stuff like that. And it's like, it just kind of feels hodgepodge-ish. I do hope that we keep our Northeast rivals though in non-conference play, that we keep UConn and UMass in the schedules. But aside from that, like I'm all in on the American.
I'm definitely keen to have Army continue playing geographically northeastern schools as best we can, regardless of where we end up in a conference. I forget who it was. It was a former coach had said that the ideal season is you've got 3 games that looking at on the schedule you are not favored to win. You got 3 games that are going to be, we'll see, it's going to be a tug of war slugfest, and if everything goes right and we perform to our best, we will win. And then we got 3 games that you never want to call the opposition a patty cake, maybe the way I did before we played the University of Louisiana Monroe. But sort of like 3 that you'll probably lose, 3 that are toss up, and 3 that you'll probably win. And then if you overperform or you do as absolute best you can, you end up with this real crackerjack great season. I love how many Power 5 teams we're playing this year. I want to play that many Power 5 teams every year. It doesn't necessarily have to be Michigan followed by LSU followed by whatever, Texas. But the more Power 5 teams we play, the better. And whether we're in the AAC or not, I don't know how many power teams we're playing moving forward. Because like we said, we're not in super conferences yet, but we're on the doorstep. And when you got a 20 team or a 24 team conference, those teams aren't getting out of conference games. They're getting 1, and it's going to be against an FCS school so that they can have a warm up or they can have a practice week or something like that. I don't see them breaking down their door to risk playing a group of 5 school. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree as well. I mean, unless like Group of Five schools like bad, like that can also be the paycheck game as well. But yeah, I mean, and I kind of see like this year as like an anomaly though, like because well, like just as there'll be more years like 2019 where Michigan was our only Power Five game than there are like years like this where we have four. I mean, is it four? Because we got Syracuse,
Syracuse,
LSU,
BC,
BC.
LSU.
Is there four? I thought there was a fourth.
We
Was
don't
it
have
Wake or
Wake
is that
this
next
year.
year? I think next year is the four because I think Wake's on the schedule next year and possibly Notre Dame. But
Oh God, I don't want to play Notre Dame again. That
it's
was,
at Yankee Stadium though. It's at Yankee Stadium, so
yeah, I don't know. The last time we played him, it didn't end well. I know that Bradshaw sat because he was injured, which I don't know how injured he was. I think he was a little dinged up. I don't know if he was really not game ready. I think Monken made the right decision having him sit, regardless of how injured he was. It just was not a pretty game to watch.
no,
But
it wasn't.
your viewers from Navy understand what that's like.
Yeah, but I don't know. Next year though, I feel like if you're an Army fan, like this is like the Super Bowl. Like, this is like the equivalent like Army going to the Rose Bowl again because it's a 100th anniversary of the Four Horsemen poem that Grantland Rice wrote and everything. It's just like you know maybe like the last farewell of college football's heart. Like in 2024, but. I mean, I've like sat down with my girlfriend and told her like the whole situation. I'm like, backtrack like 1924, made a stop in 1946, made a stop in 2010, and then like, like this game means everything. But
Right, right. Well, we're just got to see how it goes. We just got to see how it goes. And getting back to the original topic of what would Army versus Sam Houston look like, again, as I was totally picking apart Air Force versus Sam Houston, being like, yeah, they'll get 20,000, but they probably won't get 25. My estimation for an Army Sam Houston game would be only marginally more than that, probably between 25 and 30 would be my guess, just because I do know that Army does travel relatively well, especially in Texas, but they ain't filling a 72,000. I mean, if Army Air Force can't fill a baseball stadium, Army Sam Houston ain't filling an NFL stadium.
that's something that just came to me on an original topic is like Air Force's like recent success. Like if you look like recently, with the exception of the pandemic season, like Air Force is kind of steadily climbing back to I won't say like the peak in the Fisher DeBerry years. Like I mean, like Fisher DeBerry's peak in like the 80s and 90s was amazing, probably never to be replicated by Air Force again. But they're like kind of just below that. I mean, 2019 they went 11-2 and beat Washington State and Mike Leach in the rest in peace Mike Leach, but in the Cheez It Bowl in Arizona. 2020 was a pandemic year. 2021, I think they won 10 games. I think they had a 9-3 regular season and beat Louisville and Malik Cunningham in their bowl game. And then last year too, like I think there was another 10-win year where they just honestly they just like dominated Baylor. Like they dominated a Power Five team. It wasn't like the past two bowl games they had against Power Five teams were just kind of skated by and and kind of survived the Power Five. They really dominated Baylor. In Baylor's backyard too, granted. So I kind of wonder like that sort of air of like national importance of this game because I do have Air Force as a group as a New Year's Six sleeper out of the group of five because with the way Boise State looked last week against Washington, um, not as competitive as I thought they would be. I mean, I thought that game would have been closer. Like Air Force really has a chance to take the Mountain West with the 11-1, and if not 12-0 record because I mean, let's be real as an Army fan, I mean, I expect like a low scoring game between Air Force, but I just don't know if we have the juices here to beat Air Force. And then of course with Navy too, like Air Force, is light years ahead of Navy.
I feel like Air Force. I look at Air Force and I don't think that they're on the upswing. Honestly, I look at them and I think to myself like I don't even know if they've really gone anywhere. Um, with a few recent exceptions, anytime Army beats Air Force, I am breathing a sigh of relief. You look at their records in the CIC, they've obviously been the most successful football, the most successful school in the CIC since it's existed. So not in the entirety of all of college football, but since whatever it was, 71 or 72 when it came around. Um, and and then obviously Navy under Coach Ken had just really tremendous success. And Army is kind of like, we've kind of worked our way back up into things, but now we got a new offense. We're going to see how it goes. I feel like Air Force, they're not on the way up. They've always been more or less up. I'm also not a typical Army fan in that. So my fandom comes from my father, who both served, attended, and played football at West Point. And something that he ingrained in me from the very, very beginning was priority number one is to root for Army, and priority number two is to root for Air Force and Navy, except for when they're playing Army,
I
because
like that. I like that.
it's look, you can listen, he will tell you misty-eyed stories about one fight, one team, and what it was like when he was deployed in hot areas, and what it meant to have support and cooperation from those other branches. But beyond that, it a rising tide, what is it, sinks all ships, raises all ships. I don't know, I'm not a boat guy, clearly. So if Air Force is a sleeper New Year's Six team, that's good, that's fantastic. I mean, I don't want to see it at the price of them beating Army, but if they're nothing would make me happier than for Army to go undefeated, for Navy to have one loss to Army and to win the AAC, and for Air Force to have two losses, one to Navy, one to Army, and for Air Force to win the Mountain West. I mean, that would make Army the strongest of all of them and give us the best chance to do something fantastic in the postseason. So why wouldn't we root for that? And Mitty Wid Shitman aside, or whatever, on Twitter, and the trolls who love to come at everybody. I try not to do too much trolling. I give smart ass responses sometimes. They're maybe not as smart as I think they are. But like, I genuinely don't wish the ill to those schools. Other people do. That's cool. Everybody does fandom their own way. I'm not going to begrudge that. I'm not going to turn on a Navy game and roo-rah, cheer, 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 but I'll look at the box score and be content to know that they beat, that they upset whatever Eastern Carolina. Hey, that's great, because now if we can beat them, it makes us look even better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like in 2015, like watching Keenan Reynolds like last year, like, I was hoping that they would have a strong record and Army would upset them. I mean, same thing with 2016, which 2016 it worked out for us where, Navy was on the doorstep of the New Year's Six. I mean, and it was a great win on top of ending the streak. It was just a great quality win for Army and like one of national relevance. Would have been even more nationally relevant if they would have taken care of business against Temple, but you know, injuries happen, tragically, I mean, injuries happen as it did for Navy that year. But I mean, I completely agree. And I think something that's interesting with like the Air Force Sam Houston State game is like, I can't help but think like if this game were like kind of later on in the year, like maybe October, which like I know it's hard to do because of non-conference schedules, and Air Force already has Navy in late October, which I can't remember the last time that's been like that they've played like this late into the year. Um, but with say Air Force comes in undefeated, in mid-October, ranked like in the top 25. I can't imagine, but think about like how much of a watermark event this would be for academy football with a ranked Air Force team playing a neutral site game at an NFL stadium. Like and like I mean, of course, it's not like the Red River rivalry or it's gonna sell it or anything, but it's like it has like it would have a cool feel, like a cool national event type feel, rather than being just, another soulless cash grab type game.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, when I was doing research into Air Force Sam Houston, and I don't know anything about Sam Houston State football, and I was like, oh, the Battle of the Piney Woods. Oh, against Stephen F. Austin. Oh, must be a historic rivalry. What's going on there? And I started to dig into that, and then I was like, oh, they're not playing this year. Oh, because Sam Houston has moved up. Oh, they have a contract with this football stadium and they got to do something with it. Well, okay, now I see what's going on. So it's like, you know, I don't know if I'd say it's a soulless cash grab, but it's, it is a little like, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah, I would agree. And like I'm definitely pro neutral site games because I just love the spirit of bowl games and the spirit of events like that. The civic spirit, what a nice neutral site game does to a local community and economy. So I guess in saying the whole souls remark, I'm I guess sort of leaning towards, or I forget the word, pandering towards like those in the college football periods that are like, oh, keep all the games on campus, and everything. But just know that I am pro neutral site game, and you know, maybe it's not as soulless as I made it out to be.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I am curious what your take is on this is like totally far afield, but let's say Army does go into the AAC. And the discussions are now that Army Navy would be still considered a non-conference game, so they could still play every year. And there's even discussions of keeping it the week after the AAC championship. Cool. So what happens in like 2031 when both teams are peaking at the exact same time and they play each other in the AAC championship, and then a week later they play each other in the Army Navy game? Does that actually happen? Could the world implode with Army and Navy playing twice back to back in a season? What are your thoughts?
So my thing is like as I talked on like my earlier podcast on like broader like Northeastern Conference realignment talk, with UMass, because I thought UMass would have been the ones implicated in the American, but UMass fans are a cool bunch of people. There's a few accounts I follow. I want to shout them out at the Cursive U. Great account to follow. But that being said, on other podcasts, I just mentioned that I think conference championship games are very meaningless, especially in years where there's like truly a clear-cut champion. And I can give you like so many examples where a conference championship game like almost literally like lost a conference like money and like pretty much like national titles, like, and oddly enough, almost all of them come from the Big 12. But I can't really explain it. But like this past year, TCU, Kansas State, like, did that conference championship game really need to happen? Because we had a four-loss team playing a 12-0 team, a team that that was a matchup that happened earlier in the season, and TCU beat Kansas State. So it was like, what are we proving here? So that's my first part of that answer. Where like I feel like conference championship games are very meaningless unless there's a tiebreaker that unless there's a tie that needs to be broken. So my solution for this whole situation is, if Army and Navy are the top two teams in the American because they don't do divisional play in the American, why not cancel the American title game and have the actual Army Navy game be the conference championship game? Like, we'll say, hey, the Army Navy game, the official Army Navy game, is the conference championship game. We're not having an AAC championship this year, and everyone will be happy except
And
for the
just
teams that do.
load, just pile more pomp and circumstance and presentation and everything. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's not the worst idea in the world. I mean, I feel the same way you do about conference championship games. I think that by and large they're totally unneeded. Um, what's really interesting is what happens when you have a conference with 24 teams. It's like, well, you're going to divide it up into whatever, an East Division and a West Division, let's say. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have two 12-team divisions. So you're going to have an East Division championship game and a West Division championship game. And then the winners of those will meet in the actual championship game. And slowly but surely, it's going to be like, that's right. The big whatever 24 is going to have a 4-team playoff. I mean, that is where we're headed when we with these super conferences. So, I don't think, the likelihood of Army and Navy and the AAC championship happening, like the doomsday scenario, I don't really think that's something we need to worry about. I really want Army Navy to stay after all the championship games. I love that it's the only game. I love that it's by itself. It gets more eyes on it, more attention. more notoriety for the service academies. It's a win-win, across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, in a perfect world, perfect pre-conference championship game world. I mean, even I'll even say like pre 2005, before like the Big 12 expanded and ACC expanded to have their championship games, where it's just the SEC title game, where you just had Army Navy in the afternoon preceding the SEC title game. Like that was the ideal schedule, but conference championship games had to, ruin everything. I mean, I really think that's one of the things that we overlook in terms of like where we're at right now, because all a conference championship game is an extra TV game, or an extra, not even game, an extra piece of TV inventory for a conference to have. That's really all it is. An extra national TV spot for a conference to have. So I don't know. Maybe this is my old man shakes fists at crowd, or more like young man acts like old man shaking fists at crowd. But I'm just so disillusioned, and I feel like that's where I'm taking out my anger on, just the idea of conference championship games.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all we can do. But I mean, like in years like this too, and I guess this will be my last point before I get off this soapbox, this grouchy soapbox. But it's like in years like this, where Conference USA with 9 teams, where everyone's playing round robin, they're having a conference championship game, and it's just like, why are we doing this, guys? And it's on a Friday night. You have a conference that stretches from Miami to El Paso, and you're having a conference championship game on a Friday night. It's like, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? The conference only has 9 teams. Is it? So that's all I got to say. My conference championship rant's over, but that's it. I'm done.
Well, I thought that when you reached out to me about being on this podcast, you said it was going to be a short episode.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
I think we're clocking in at almost an hour here. I'm on East Coast time, and I'm gonna be high stepping through the swamp tomorrow. So I should probably hit the hay. But I just want to say
Rico.
thank you so much, man, for inviting me on again. I always have a blast with you, Omar. This is fantastic. Yeah, I know we didn't talk about it, but beat Dell State.
Yeah, beat Delaware State, and I sure hope we do. I hope we beat a team that lost to a D2 team, but if
No,
not,
please, we
yeah,
have
like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying not to say the Y word, because if we lose, that'll be even worse than the 2014, Y word game. But that being said, thank you again, Cuthbert, for joining. I enjoyed. I'm sorry for keeping you up so late. I too will be stepping through the swamp, waking up early for formation. But until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.